Fortunately, my parents gave me an internet unique name before the internet was invented, which I think is a staggering foresight. I will be mentioning the future in a little bit in the talk. Thanks to the fragmentation of social media, honestly, I have no idea where I am. I'm everywhere. So you can find me. Actually, during the previous talk, I suddenly realized, thank you, May, for inspiring me. I'll just put that one in there as well. Because I suddenly realized that Yoda was quoted. I took a Yoda quote out of my talk this morning, and I thought, but I've still got to have some Star Wars there. We just had Star Wars Day. So we are here to talk about fun. And it kind of fits with the theme of the conference. And the interesting thing is we can actually find this everywhere. Productivity is messing around and having fun, it turns out. Apparently this is a deep truth. You can find out more about this one tomorrow afternoon. Because Tricia and Holly are going to be talking about that. Oh, I see. This is how it's going to work. It's going to, there we go. Work on the transitions. We can actually see already the idea that people are trying to take the things that have traditionally been framed as work and say, you know what, actually, there is something here to be had. There's something here to be had that makes you human and is enjoyable, that we don't have a strict separation, perhaps, between these ideas. Work doesn't have to be dull. Now, obviously, I do have a bias here, and I'm going to declare this one up front, because Tricia and I have worked together. We finished editing this book. It's kind of the first wave of lockdowns. So what else are you going to do? We might as well finish this book. So 97 things every Java programmer should know. We are having a delayed launch event tomorrow, delayed by 4 years. So we do actually have a session where we're going to be going through this and inviting some of the contributors to talk about this one. And again, one of the other biases is that Holly contributed a couple of items. And lo and behold, there's the word fun again. Java should feel fun, which kind of tells you, and she makes a really strong case for this. And the point there, and I think we can actually generalize this to any programming activity, programming language that we work with. It should. Now, should is a very heavily loaded word. In fact, my wife uses it against me. She says, you people in IT, you're all terrible, because you keep using the word should. And obviously, as someone who works in development, I am no different from somebody who does support in my wife's eyes. And she says, I ring up the IT people, and they say, well, that should work. Should is, so those people doing behavior-driven development, your choice of the word should, not a good one. The rest of the population is triggered by it. But it should feel fun. So therefore, that asks us to say, well, if it's not feeling fun, what is the cause of that? And we were invited to think about that, because there is this idea, a lot of us got into this stuff because it was fun, we enjoyed it. There was some element in there that drew us into this. And I could do this for a living, because intrinsically there's some kind of fun. So what are the things that detract from that? Things feel unfun. Love the word. Feel free to use that one, courtesy of Holly. Unfun, because we know they're waste. And there are a number of things that we would characterize as being wasteful. Holly gives a couple of examples in terms of things like meetings. The classic, this meeting could have been an email. These days I look at a lot of code and say, this framework could have been a single line of code. If you knew how to use the language, that kind of stuff. But there are so many examples of where we are looking for waste. And we are looking for the idea of, is there a thing that I don't necessarily have to do? And the funny thing is that very act of optimization is itself playful and fun. If you are in software, if you are in technology, you often get a bit of a kick out of going like, hey, guess what? There's a different way of doing this. And it's simpler. Identifying the things that are waste. And that's not just in the process and the organization around you. That is within and in front, it's within your code base. It's the things that you're experiencing directly. Now, I'm not going to just stick with the Java thing. Here's another thing from a different perspective. James Grenning's book, Test-Driven Development for Embedded C. Now, I often use this book when I am teaching people about unit testing, when I'm running workshops, when I'm running training courses, because often people say, oh, we can't do that here. And often when people say, oh, we can't do TDD, what they actually mean is we can't do unit testing or, honestly, integration testing. Testing, no, we don't do that. We can't do that. So normally people say, oh, we can't do TDD, and you pull on that thread, and it turns out to be something far larger and scarier. We test in production. Oh, we can do that. But one of the things I always do is people say, oh, well, our system's really special. Oh, you can't do that here. How special is your system? Has anybody ever worked with C in an embedded environment? Yeah, it's super special. It really is super special, and here's a whole book on how to do it. Is your system more special than this? No? Okay. And what this book actually invites you to do, in fact, a lot of these things invite you to do, is creativity. In other words, okay, I'd like to be able to do this. I'd like to be able to explore this, but how? I can't do it as per the book. I wonder if there's a different thing. There's a playfulness and exploration to that. Another thing that I like about this is he has a really good definition of some of the things that we might want, not simply from TDD, but from a more continuous style of testing. TDD is fun. It's like a game where you navigate a maze of technical decisions that lead to highly robust software while avoiding the quagmire of long debug sessions. Immediately, he's laid out why we want to do any kind of testing at all alongside our coding. With each test, there is a renewed sense of accomplishment and clear progress toward the goal. That idea, if you are in technology, one of the things that most of the things that are rewards that we would attribute in other disciplines are not there. Progress is actually, if you feel you're not making progress, that's actually one of the most frustrating things of all. You feel that you're in stasis. You feel that I've done a week's worth of work, and honestly, had I not turned up to work, it would have been exactly the same. So the point there is when we feel we have progress, when we can see progress. Automated tests record assumptions, capture decisions, and free the mind to focus on the next challenge. We can distill some of the things here very simply. I'm not just here to sort of say, hey, do TDD. That's not the message. It's whatever you do in your workflow, whatever you do in your tooling, accomplishment, progress, focus. Do you get that? There's a lot of fun to be had in that. You kind of feel, yeah, this is good. I can feel I'm making progress. I've got focus. We enjoy that sense of focus, that sense of having done something. But ultimately, one of the things is that he opens with, TDD is fun. And this is a really interesting one, because I ran a workshop for a company. It was a week-long workshop for a company in Turkey a number of years ago. And it involved a whole load of stuff. And it included some elements of people working together, writing tests, doing TDD, trying to meet my arbitrary requirements as customer. And one of the funny things is, kind of in private, towards the end of the course, an attendee came up to me and she said, is it okay that I'm finding this fun? I'm enjoying this. And it was that kind of notion of like, somehow that's a bad thing, because this is a work thing, and I'm enjoying it. And there's kind of something there in the mindset that is almost holding her back, or holding her back in a daily sense. The fact that the great thing about training courses is that you get to take people away from their existing bubbles. So this is all about fun. Now, obviously, anybody here program Kotlin? Well, you already know that it's fun, because most of the language has fun written all over it as a constant reminder. So we've got all these ideas that are telling us about fun. So there's this idea about work. I'm going to try and rehabilitate work. So the late Soviet dissident, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, work is what horses die of. Everybody should know that. We need to kind of rehabilitate this. Now, of course, I'm not saying you're not going to do work. We're trying to find some kind of balance here. I'm not saying don't do work. What we're trying to do is find the balance that is enjoyable. We spend a lot of our time, our waking hours in this. This is really important. Balance is important, okay? You're supposed to bring balance to it. Yeah, I did have another Star Wars reference in there. I forgot. So, this is my younger son's favorite film, 3. So, there's a whole point here about trying to find this balance. And in doing so, I'm going to take you back to 1970. There is one aspect here, one of the classic Velvet Underground albums often overlooked, but one of my favorite tracks on this is Oh Sweet Nothing, which was recently used in Loki Season 2 to close out an episode. Absolutely brilliant 3-chord song, such a vibe, it's nihilistic and yet sort of uplifting, which is, sometimes you find that mood. The point here is, let's talk a little bit about nothingness. Let's talk about the absence of stuff. Let's talk a moment about boredom. Because boredom does itself intrinsically have value. When we're looking for balance, it's not the elimination of all of this stuff. It's the moderation to try and find where is the point on that fader that we are looking for in our work. As this article highlights, and you find this actually all over psychological journals, boredom can actually foster creative ideas, refilling your dwindling reservoir, replenishing your work mojo, and providing an incubation period for embryonic work ideas to hatch. One of the criticisms we often have of people being always on is that we've lost the ability to be bored. And actually, it turns out there's a great deal to be had in that. It allows your default mode network to start doing other things. So we need some of that. Otherwise, we end up with a thing called hedonic adaptation, which I may come back to. We also need to recognize that whatever our techniques and our focus, we do have to look after ourselves. There is nothing that will take away any ability to enjoy something than poor mental health and poor mental well-being. Whether that is a transient thing or whether you are in the throes of something deeper and more complex, you've got to look after that. Hillel Wayne has this lovely observation. One of my most controversial software opinions is that your sleep quality and stress level matter far, far more than the languages you use or the practices you follow. Nothing else comes close, not type systems, not TDD, not form methods, not anything. And it's that whole idea of if you feel that you have had a good night's sleep and you feel good, then everything else is good. It doesn't matter what is going on. You can do it. You're open to the joy. If you're not, then you are closed off from that. So there is this notion, part of the trick to having fun is there's almost a bizarre preparation for fun. You have to be in the right state, and that's about looking after yourself and looking after those around you. So having established some of the ground rules and the boundaries, and go back to Holly's piece, if unfun is bad, what is fun? Is it good? And how do we get it? I mean, can you just go to a fun dispenser? That sounds good. Exploration. We've seen that mentioned this morning, okay? Focused investigation. When you are exploring something, there's learning to be had there. That's quite joyous. Maybe nobody's done what you're about to do. Maybe somebody else has done it, and they've already laid a path for you, but you're still learning. It's new to you. It's the first time you've done something. This is fun. Play. And you can do that from the sheer joy of it. You can do that in the sense of taking yourself away from the screen and doing something that qualifies as formal play. But there's also other things that qualify informally. Sometimes crazy little things like using recursion in a language that doesn't support recursion. I did this a few years ago. You know what? That was great. That was fun because I'm just sitting there going yeah, this works. Okay, now how do I make it work differently just for a bit of a kick because I just read something? Just put that idea in. Only took a few minutes. Did that change the overall productivity of the project? No, we were months late anyway. But I was having fun, and I also learned a great deal about that, which bizarrely enough actually turned out to be useful later. Puzzles. Now, of course, you can reframe existing things. You can reframe how to work with a piece of legacy code as a puzzle, something to be cracked. Somebody once knew how this worked, but they've left the building. It's my job now to crack this, because clearly it does work. The compiler says yes. The tests, whatever they mean, say yes. That's another puzzle to crack. We'll get there. You can reframe things. You can look at this. You can look at debugging as a challenge. And indeed, sometimes the way that people are able to deal with things like legacy code is to reframe it. I met somebody from a team who sort of said, yeah, we regard it as kind of we are scientists in lab coats, and we have this artifact that we must understand. They depersonalized it. And it's like a journey. It's just like, yeah, how do we work? How do we make this thing work? How do we understand what this tribe of people once built? What is the symbolism that they use? What do these strange incantations mean? They look at it like that. They approach it from a perspective of inquisitiveness and science, rather than, oh my God, this is my work. It's me. We often identify work with me. They found the right separation that made it enjoyable. Again, games can be reframed within the context of what we're doing, as well as actually step away from the keyboard and actually play a game that is formally recognized as a game. And the idea of achieving some kind of outcome, the classic sense of work. Now, one of the things I recently reread, this the late Ursula Le Guin, who was probably one of the greatest writers of the 20th century, to be quite frank. I recently reread a book of hers, The Dispossessed, which I read when I was a teenager, which was quite a long time ago. And I now realized this book was published 50 years ago. It won a lot of awards. I now realize that when I read it, it was only just over a decade after it had come out, and I thought it was old. Your idea of what is old changes with time, trust me. But this is a classic. This is an absolute classic. The reread was massively enjoyable. Finished rereading it recently. Really held up well. And it explores anarchy, a system of anarchy, anarcho-syndicalism to be precise, on a world. And I'm not going to get into anarchist theory right now, but there is a thing called programmer anarchy. Or there was a thing. I don't know anybody's practicing it at the moment. But basically, Fred George's programmer anarchy reduced everything down to 2 roles. Whatever roles, if you're working in a safe environment, you've probably got a gazillion roles. And program anarchy reduced it all the way down to 2 roles. There is the developer, there is the customer. That is it. There are no managers. There are no coaches. There is nothing else. We do it for ourselves. We manage ourselves. We coach ourselves. We coach one another because we intrinsically enjoy it. That's a deep idea. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. What they do in this book is one of the things is that there is an invented language, Pravik, which reframes a number of things as a reaction to what the anarchists were reacting against. And this language, Pravik, uses the same word for work and play. And you might say, well, okay, that's going to be really bad because maybe I don't like work, but I really enjoy play. Oh, they're not, they have a special word for that, the bit that you don't like. The eminently descriptive kleggage. I think this is such a wonderful, it's used to describe drudgery. In other words, there is a clear separation here of why shouldn't work and play have this ease of flow from one to the other? And then we say, yeah, but work isn't always enjoyable. Yeah, we've got a term for that, kleggage. Okay? And there's that idea of that separation, that we can have a choice about that. And this is the book very much about choice. So when looking at all of this, it is very easy to get drawn into all of these aspects. And I guess probably one of the interesting areas when we think about kleggage is often people's experience of kleggage is legacy code. But we also need to be looking out for other things, activities that we do that short-circuit the possibility for fun and reward in our work. So this is kind of an interesting one. An observation I made a year ago. Practical consequence of using LLMs to generate code is that many developers will find they've unwittingly moved themselves into a role they were probably trying to avoid. They have automated the creation of legacy code. Because it was written by somebody else, right? You've now got to understand it. They've redefined their job role as debugging and fixing such code. We may have actually inadvertently outsourced the fun. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got this. This was generated by Copilot by ChatGPT. It's fantastic. It's great. I have no idea what it does. And this is really interesting. I'm not saying that it's all bad. What I'm saying is that there's about 10% developers, and I'm being generous here, possibly, who know how to get the best out of these things. For the remaining 90%, I'm going to say it's not even an even outcome. I think a lot of people are actually creating far worse code. And they're creating when people say, oh, is AI going to take my job? No, it's going to create it. It's going to be that last part. You've got to watch out. You've got to be very careful about just feeling the vibes. And then, in fact, what I didn't realize is that within less than a year, my prediction actually demonstrated, this is a study from GitClear in January, coding on Copilot, 2023 data shows downward pressure on code quality. Oh. Not good. 150 million lines of analyzed code. plus projections for 2024. They highlighted the AI era. And one of the things they observed, we find disconcerting trends for maintainability. Code churn, the percentage of lines that are reverted or updated less than 2 weeks after being authored, is projected to double in 2024 compared to the pre-AI baseline. We further find the percentage of added code and copy-pasted code is increasing in proportion to updated, deleted, and moved code. This is really interesting because when we think about refactoring or creating a habitable environment for ourselves, an environment in which our coding is fun, we have copy and paste and adding. In fact, they kind of open, if I recall correctly, they opened the study kind of really asking a question. If I use an AI assistant, is it like having a close mentor who's a senior developer who's intimate with the code and can provide wisdom, or is it like having a short-term contractor? The answer is it's like having a bunch of short-term contractors rampaging through your code. Now, this is not to say this stuff is not going to work. I'm talking about the 90% here. But don't automatically assume that you and your colleagues are in the 10%. The people who really know how to use this are going to have such an advantage. Everybody else is busy slowing themselves down. You've got to be really careful with this. Okay? It's like any tooling, you've got to be really careful and know how to use it. We still don't know how to use refactoring tools, and they've been around for over 2 decades in the mainstream. And I say we don't know how to use it because the number of times I run workshops and people show me the code that they've got and said, you do know that you can automatically refactor that. Oh, we've used rename. And that's it. All of that, that small percentage of developers who know how to use it, they are having great fun. And they are really producing some great stuff, expressing it, and they're enjoying their work. And yet, the tools are in front of us. It turns out it's not the tool, it's us. So we need, just as in any anarchy, we need to sort out some of the things. It's a beautiful observation from Yvonne Lamb. When we're talking about technical debt is classically unfun, unmanaged technical debt. My theory of tech debt is that housework is the correct metaphor for the thing we call tech debt, but we can't use it because tech has been made up of people who don't do housework or manage housework being done. And you know what? One of the things, actually, through the pandemic and actually working from home, I continue to work from home a reasonable amount. I really like doing a whole load of tasks in the house because it's my break. It allows my brain to get a break from whatever I was focused on. There is a meditation that you can have whilst loading a washing machine, unloading a washing machine. You know, there's a whole kind of thing there. And actually, it's quite enjoyable when you think about it. Okay? In fact, when you don't think about it. That's the joy of it. That's the sweet nothing. So there is this notion that what we're trying to do is we want to try and find this balance. The past is one of the things that potentially holds us back, the code that is already there. We need to make peace with that, but also find the joy and the fun that can be had when dealing with it. The language, by the way, that did not allow recursion was Fortran. I worked on a Fortran project a number of years ago. The code base was unjoyous in the extreme. How did I make it fun? I wrote a bunch of tools that gave me information about it. I didn't know at that point it was called code analytics, but it was much more fun. I tried to treat it as like, okay, what can I learn about it? What are the structures? What can I find out about it? But in other cases, we are held back by our past. We need to reframe that. We also need to be very careful with the future. Future is where anxiety comes from. Future is also where an awful lot of frameworks come from. Oh, we'll need this in future. Hey, look, I'm going to make this totally configurable. How do I use this? Oh, you just configure it. Yeah, but how do I use it? Oh, you just configure it to do what you want. But how? Oh, yeah, we haven't written the pages for that yet. But, you know, you can do anything. People don't want to do anything. Software development is not about, projects are not pulled together because the customer comes in and says, hey, I want some software. What do you want it to do? I don't know. Anything. At that point, just give them a Java compiler because that is the ultimate thing. Yeah, here, have this. This does anything. Oh, there's a little bit of configuration. But, we use formal notation for that. You put it in .java files and you're all good. The point there is the value and the joy comes from making it specific. And that's the point. We're looking for a balance here. We live very much trying to find this. That's in the present. That's where we are. We're not somewhere else. So that's where we should be thinking. That's what we're looking for. That's what we need to extract from the present moment. People talk about extractive capitalism. I want to be more positive. I'm going to talk about extractive anarchism. It's just like, here I am in the moment. What can I do? Yeah, there is no other moment. And the point there is don't put it off. The author Annie Dillard observed, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. The things that you do today that is your career, that is the project, that is the very thing. Don't put it off until next year. Thank you very much.